East Side with the story. Allie.
Well, starting tomorrow, the city is opening 7 miles of streets for pedestrians, so New Yorkers can get out and about this weekend and enjoy the warm weather at a safe social distance. And that 7 miles includes a 6-block stretch here right next to Carl Schurz Park. Now, Mayor de Blasio's Open Streets plan was supposed to start on Monday, eventually turning 100 miles of city streets into car-free spaces, so pedestrians and bikers can have more space to roam freely in and around roads by the parks as the weather warms up. But that does not mean that people will be allowed to congregate in these places. NYPD Chief of Department Terrence Monahan says 1,000 officers will be deployed all across the 5 boroughs this weekend to stop group activities, make sure everyone is wearing a face mask, and socially distancing.
Barbecues with large gatherings of people together, organized sports events, people hanging together trying to drink. We will be breaking these up. We will be actively involved. People who are just walking together, exercising on a blanket with their family, those aren't people we're going to bother. If they don't have a mask, we'll give them a mask.
So why the early rollout? Well, Mayor de Blasio said that the NYPD and the city agencies worked quickly tonight to make sure that all the proper enforcement would be in place by tomorrow so that people can start taking over the streets on Saturday. We're live on the Upper East Side. Allie Bauman, CBS 2 News.
Okay, Allie, well, New Jersey, as we mentioned, is also easing some restrictions this weekend. State parks and many local parks will reopen starting tomorrow, but social distancing rules will still have to be followed. CBS 2's Christina Fan has more on that.
Families in New Jersey are ecstatic over a change in scenery this weekend. After being confined to their homes for weeks, they can finally return to parks.
Especially with the nicer weather, it'll be nice to have somewhere with space.
We are human beings, we need fresh air.
But the reopening of parks and golf courses comes with a lot of strings attached. Parking will be reduced by 50%. Playgrounds, organized sports, and picnics remain off limits. Governor Phil Murphy warning that people better be on their best behavior.
I can't say this strongly enough. This weekend will be a huge test for all of us as to whether or not we stay on this trajectory.
While all state parks will be reopened, county and city parks will be up to local jurisdictions. In Hudson County, a coalition of mayors decided to keep theirs closed. Other towns like Teaneck will have officers issuing stern warnings to those disobeying rules.
Hello folks, we're already into the 5th month of the year, and it's amazing to see how this pandemic has progressed, and the recovery efforts to get back on track have been unbelievable, to say the least. Now, I gotta get the numbers up, so I'm gonna do that once again. As of May 2nd, 1:32 p.m., now just under 3.4 million worldwide cases of coronavirus, 3,392,771 to be exact. 1,117,979 of those cases coming in the U.S. alone. 241,193 fatalities, and 1,068,000. Yeah, so 1,068,848 have recovered. So a lot of good things. Despite the bad numbers, the recovery rate continues to go up, while the fatalities, as long as we keep that fatality rate low, we're going to continue to be fine, and we'll continue to improve as the month goes on. So as you saw in the news clip, some of the big major parks are opening up once again, which is a good step in the right direction, even though we are still far from normalcy. And we still have to maintain a good distance apart from people and wear masks as well. Once again, no need to rush things. I mean, the school year is pretty much null and void as far as students coming back to the buildings. This summer is pretty much trial and error, more than ever, as one little mistake can wind us back to square one, although I'm very confident that with the nicer weather coming, that this virus will lay back a little bit and will allow for more recoveries, and perhaps achieve a little bit of herd immunity before the next wave comes in time for the flu season. Here's what I think will result from this. we are going to find ourselves high-fiving, hugging, doing all the pleasantries that we'd normally do when we greet people, when we greet our loved ones, our friends, consistently once again after a long while. Once we bridge that mental gap, right, the mental gap, so to speak, we are going to be more vigilant at how we look at people who are sick, and if there are any flare-ups with any diseases, such as the cold, flu, coronavirus, etc. Because, this year maybe the coronavirus, but then what about 6-7 years from now when maybe perhaps another strain of the flu could perhaps reach pandemic levels, okay? But whatever lifestyle that we used to live prior to March of this year is out the door. It's gone. And I'm going to elaborate that much more later. But for now, I'm going to pause it right here and go outside for a little bit. It's very nice and warm. It's sunny. It's 70 degrees out. It's perfect for bike riding and, a nice long stroll outside. And, of course, I'll have my mask on and a helmet, because that's probably the most important. So, yes, I'm back from my bike ride, and it was actually quite tough to bike for a prolonged period of time. Believe it or not, I was only able to go 15 minutes before I started getting very winded. Part of it was the fact that I was wearing a face mask, which restricted breathing somewhat, although I don't really think in hindsight that that's the reason why that I got winded. I think it's more so the fact that I haven't literally rode a bike for over 7 months, and stationary bikes at the gym don't count. Oh well, still made the best of it being outside and just enjoying this beautiful weather. Now, on to business. Just a moment ago, I said that while we will eventually go back to being able to interact with other people just about the same as before this pandemic, obviously we're now becoming more aware, we're much more smarter and more cognizant of when people are sick. Routines and lifestyles are going to change for the long term and perhaps even permanently. I already said in one video about the death of GameStop and potentially the movie theater industry because of streaming sites like Amazon Prime and Netflix picking up the slack. But we're also seeing the rapid rise of telecommunication to anyone, anywhere around the globe, and the fact that people will see that working from home is practical versus having to travel by car, bus, train, and even airplanes to a job meeting. Depending on what part of the scale you're on, this may be very convenient or perhaps a worrying thing. Why worrying? Well, it goes back to over a decade ago, back when I was a teenager, when social media and smartphones were rapidly on the rise. Many people, mostly older people, and actually some younger people, myself included, believe it or not, were worrying that this was going to make teenagers and college students, and you could probably even say people in general, confined to their homes, faces glued to social media and the apps. Okay, no reading books, no outdoor activity, heck, not even playing video games. Hey, at least video games require some form of critical thinking, especially when you're playing Super Mario and Zelda. And basically nothing really too productive, okay? And nothing like even a hobby. However, what my generation of people did was a choice. Okay, I'm going to say it again. What my generation of people did was a choice. Think about that for a moment. A choice. You know, I was talking to one of my friends named Richard. Shout out to him. And exactly how technology is going to be utilized differently compared to today and moving forward. He basically highlighted the difference between a choice and forced. Back then, many of us chose to stay home and FaceTimed and Skype and did whatever we did on social media, right? Remember Uvu? Remember Skype? I mean, Skype is still pretty much relevant, but the idea of communicating with someone halfway around the globe, anywhere, any 2 points on the map, nothing new. But it was a choice. It wasn't a requirement. And so whenever I communicated with somebody through Skype and Uvu, it was very casual. Just friends hanging out and just talking about their day. But in lieu of this pandemic, we are now forced to do things a certain way, using the full features of Google Hangouts and Zoom to do distance learning and having meetings without having the need to go out of the house. The coronavirus affects everybody, no doubt about it. It's obvious. But I think the group of people that will be affected the most are today's children. I'm talking about mainly elementary to middle schoolers, but I guess maybe if you want, you can even throw in today's high schoolers. Whatever consequences we face moving forward with our way of living, and these young kids, they're going to grow up with them. You see, they didn't have a choice. Well, back then they probably had a choice, but not now. And that's what they're going to deal with. While for the rest of us, memories are what's left of the old ways. Air travel will not be the same anymore, and you can be sure that business and trading worldwide is going to take on a new dynamic, as I'm pretty sure countries are going to pull out of China because of this. A lot of what I said just now, it was going to happen anyway. The distance learning, the telecommunicating, the death of TV cable with the advent of streaming, younger kids already knowing how to navigate through a smart device, not being a surprise anymore. But rather than happening 4, 5, 6 years from now, it's all happening pretty much with a snap of the finger. I always hope I'm wrong when it comes to topics like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if what I just said just now actually will happen. For all the Star Wars fan out there, may the 4th be with you. You wish the Force can just wipe out this pandemic clean off the map, as there are now 3,562,919 worldwide cases, 1,172,670 of those in the US alone, with just a shade under 250,000 fatalities, 249,712 to be exact, while just over a million now have recovered. 1.1 million, I should say. And this was of 3:32 p.m. Just for the record, I've only managed to watch one Star Wars movie in its entirety, and that was Episode 1, The Phantom Menace from 1999. I was only 5 years old back then, or just a little bit before 5 years old. Movie was released in May, and I didn't turn 5 till July. But anyway, I am by no means a Star Wars fan, and it's even worse now that Disney has taken control over this, but that's beside the point. You know, last year on this date, I remembered exactly what I was doing on May 4th. I was actually jamming out on a public painted piano in the town of Cranford, New Jersey. And it was a warm 80-degree day with plenty of sun. And boy, what a difference 1 year makes, doesn't it? I feel like there might not be a painted piano in Cranford this summer due to this virus. I just hope that it's not for good, because that was really a good project that the township had put out. It's very similar to what New York City did many years ago when they scattered painted pianos across the city for people to just go up and have an impromptu jam session. I believe the project was called Play Me, I'm Yours. I think there was also another one called Sing for Hope. You have to also keep in mind, though, that with many people touching that piano, you get the sense that something like this may not exist anymore. I hope that's not the case, but you know now that there's going to be new guidelines and new regulations to help prevent the spread of germs and diseases more than ever, now more than ever. And I don't even know how many times that piano in Cranford gets wiped down. So obviously there's I always want to look at the positives and think, okay, maybe not this year, maybe not next year either, but hopefully something like this does come back. You know, I always like jamming out in front of people, and I could probably attract people who could give me, you know, some other performing gigs. You know, one little thing will lead to another, but that probably will not happen for the foreseeable future. But anyway, here's a little clip of me playing on that painted piano back in July last year, and I was celebrating my 25th birthday with friends in Cranford, and jammed on some Super Mario music. So take a listen and enjoy. It's still Cinco de Mayo, folks, even though it's approaching 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Celebrations in Mexico today, I would think, would be just confined to the family home, probably with the help of Zoom, Google Hangouts, or Skype to incorporate more people. Boy, I fondly remember those days when I was in elementary school learning Spanish. We would have Cinco de Mayo celebrations during the period, and it filled with us wearing sombreros and eating Mexican food and listening to mariachi band music. Cinco de Mayo, in short, commemorates the Mexican army successfully defeating the French at the Battle of Pueblo, led by General Zaragoza. Hopefully I pronounced that right. It is one of the biggest days in the Mexican calendar, along with Mexican Independence Day on September 16th. Anyway, things have been slowing down recently, slowing down to a crawl as far as filming new content for this series. Not much for me to film, and I don't really want to take this series the way of a traditional vlog, daily vlog more specifically. But I will tell you that that in recent weeks, especially through April, I've been reading a lot, as well as finding time to edit and splice the clips together so that it looks like one cohesive movie, and that I can continue to give you the latest of what is happening with this pandemic as it continues to change day by day. Currently, I am 480 pages into Frank Herbert's Dune. In fact, I got my copy right here. The copy that I own, as you can see, is smaller, it's thicker, so 480 pages might probably be maybe around 200 in Frank Herbert's original copy. It's a pretty interesting story that I've read so far, despite some of the many perspectives that are being presented with each chapter. I will honestly say it is a bit of a hard read at first, with all the terminology and the different themes about politics, war, science fiction, and religion. At the end of the book, there are appendixes and a glossary. I didn't want to spoil myself by going to those parts first. Plus, if anything, there's a movie that is supposed to be released at the end of this year, which I actually hope it does well financially, because there hasn't been a faithful adaptation to one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. There was a movie from 1984 distributed by Universal, and it was a box office failure. So hopefully this adaptation from Warner Brothers will do the novel justice. I am also in the middle of reading Jeff Ryan's How Nintendo Conquered America. I'm about 12 chapters into that. It's a fascinating read, but I must caution that there are some cheap attempts at humor sprinkled throughout the book, including a word on page 113 that would probably be censored if it was said on television. Then there's also a third book that I'm reading called A Geek in Japan. My interest for Japan let me rephrase that. My interest for Japan has blossomed considerably this year and last year as well, when my two cousins started getting into anime, and they knew a lot of the theme songs that on YouTube they have their videos where it's like, name that theme song, and my two cousins, shout out to you two, Anya and Amy, that would and they would compete against each other to see who could recognize that theme song first. And then I have students from from the private studio that I work who are also into anime, so that inspired me to learn about the culture of Japan. And yeah, it's an interesting read, and I hope to travel to Tokyo one day when this pandemic is over, hopefully for the Olympic Games, if I'm lucky. And of course, Super Nintendo Land. But yes, at this point though, we're just cruising on this very long holding pattern that I hope will come to an end sooner than later. Our next episode will be another memories reflection, just like what I did a couple of episodes ago with the year 2009. I'm going to explore the years 2004 and 2016 and explain some of the big moments that had happened that year, as well as how what happened to me on a personal level that shaped me who I am, So be sure to keep tuning in to GameboyTV as we all continue to navigate through this pandemic.